Hello, Phil here from Wings of Pegasus and welcome to another analysis video. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. On the agenda tonight, we're going back to 1978. We're going to be taking a look at Merle Haggard and he's going to be performing Working Man Blues. So let's get Merle and the guys up on screen and see how they get on.
We always do two or three for the working man, but this is really the working man song, one called the Working Man Blues. It's a big job getting by with 9 kids and a wife. Yeah, but I've been a working man dang near all my life, and I'll keep on working as long as my 2 hands are fit to use. I'll drink a little beer that evening and sing a little bit of these working man blues. Well, I keep my nose on the grindstone, work hard every day. I might get a little tired on the weekend after I draw my pay, but I go back working. Come Monday morning, I'm right back with the crew. I'll drink a little beer that evening and sing a little bit of these working man blues. Sometimes I think about leaving, do a little bum around, throw my bills out the window, catch me a train to another town, but I go back working. I gotta buy my kids a brand new pair of shoes. I'll drink a little beer that evening and sing a little bit of these working man blues.
I'm just going to jump in here. As always, the link to this video is going to be in the description below, so you guys can go and check it out there to watch it the whole way through without me interrupting. But with this performance, we've got the full band here because there's the horn section that's out of shot when we're looking at Merle at the front of the stage, but also top quality technical ability across the board. And this tended to always be the way with country music and outlaw country, the Bakersfield sound, the slightly more edgy country side that we have. This is the interesting thing about country music. There were different types that people could get into, and especially when a lot of people weren't into the Nashville sound and it was very clean cut and to some people overproduced, and then you had outlaw country, the Bakersfield sound, as Merle Haggard is known for, that was rougher around the edges, but also people might attribute that roughness or assume that it's somehow inferior with technical ability on the instruments, whereas that wasn't the case. As we can see here, top level professionalism and technical ability at their instruments, but they're just making a different sound. It could have been seen as something a little bit more edgy, rough around the edges, but also maybe political and controversial. And when I say rough around the edges, I don't mean that from a playing perspective. That rough around the edges feel can probably be attributed to the lead vocal, because you're never going to hear any country music that's delivered with attitude, with long-held notes and a wide vibrato, because that is an attitude, and that's exactly the opposite of the sound that these guys were going for, and it doesn't make the point as seriously as just talking to someone and having that conversational quality to it. But by no means does it mean that they're not singing, because Merle Haggard here is hitting pitches and he's very accurate pitch-wise as well. It's just that stylization of the vocal to give it a little bit more attitude with the delivery and not spend as much time on vibrato, because sometimes artistically you won't want to do that when you're making a point about a composition or a vocal phrase that you might be singing. So every member of the band here has got the ability to hold down a solo if required. We've got that on the keys at the moment. We will be having a small solo from Merle later on and a fiddle solo. We just heard that lead guitar solo from Roy Nichols, and so well phrased throughout that whole solo. The bends as well, the control, and some of those little blues lines that he throws in there. There's so much great playing across the board here, and the vocal delivery of Merle. But what I want to draw your attention to are the chord shapes that Merle's using. Even though his guitar isn't really high in the mix, when we get to his lead solo, we will get to hear it more clearly. But the choices of chords that he goes to, because he's using some bar chords here that you might think would be easier to play in other positions, but we will get into that and I'll demonstrate it as well. The way that he's barring these chords, and it's not easy to do. Sometimes you might get a player who uses a capo or a capo, depending on where you're from, in order to shift the pitch of the strings up however high you want it. In this case, it'll be just one fret, so a semitone up from standard tuning. So I've got the guitar out just quickly to demonstrate some of these chord shapes, but also the groove that the whole band are laying down, because we're driving forward the whole time. We've got this really cool riff, the like that, but this isn't what's being played by Merle. Merle is just playing a little bit of rhythm. Like I said, it's so low in the mix, you can't really make it out too much, but we can see the chord shapes that are going on. But going back to the riff and that underlying groove, we've got this it's just always driving forward, and you can get that rhythm into the riff, but also into the chords, and that whole rhythm works. So I'm going, so you can hear there's quite a lot of muting going on. The more you want to emphasize that driving forward, and there'll be a particular part of the band who are muting quite a lot, but driving it forward with that rhythm, with those little upstrokes in there just to keep it hopping along, and that gives you all of that groove. And then when you throw in you can start to hear where that riff fits in with the rhythm that's going on in the background as well. Hopefully you guys can hear the guitar well enough across the mic. Quickly, just to explain the shapes that Merle's using, because he starts off in this G shape with the third finger and the little finger, and barring with the first finger. So he's got this, and you can see that his strumming with the right hand isn't dramatic at all. He's just spending a bit of time on the middle of the guitar with those strings, and just keeping it moving along a little bit. He also then changes over to the C shape, which will be exactly the same thing. As you can see, my second finger, third finger, and little finger is playing the C shape. Again, just concentrating on those middle strings back into the G shape. So these shapes that Merle's playing aren't ones that you learn straight away when you pick up the guitar. They are shapes that are quite advanced, and you can also play the chords in different positions on the guitar, which are easier and more easily fretted. Obviously, it changes from player to player what you find easy and what you find more difficult, but generally what you'll see when the key is just a semitone above standard tuning, people will get out their capo and stick it on the bottom of the guitar on that first fret. And now you can play all of your G, you can do all of your fills if you want to. Then when I want to go to the C, It's just all really easy. So Merle uses this C shape, and it's not a C chord, but when you play a C chord, you'll notice the shape. The chord that we're playing is a D sharp, and then we move down to a C sharp, and then we get to the key of the song, which is the G sharp. So those three chords together, he does move between those, but interestingly, he also uses this C shape, which is a D sharp chord, and then he moves to just one fret higher, but now using the bar chord position for the C sharp, and then he goes into the full bar chord shape for the G sharp. So it means that Merle, even though it doesn't look like he's doing much on the fretboard, he's playing different shapes, different chord shapes and different voicings of chords, and he's putting in very subtle strumming. It's not like I'm playing where we're going, and you can see lots of action going on, lots of muted strumming and all of that driving forward sound. That's what you want if you're just playing and you haven't got a big band and you haven't got a big rhythm section. You want to try and drive as much as you can with your own guitar. But when you've got a full band like this, you can see that Merle's he's just concentrating on those middle strings, being really light with his strumming. Sometimes when you are watching somebody play the guitar and they're jumping between different chord shapes, it can be because they have chords that they like and other chord shapes that they don't like, whereas Merle here is playing different versions of chords that would be used to avoid playing another shape, but then he'll go on and play that other shape that you might think, oh, he's playing it that way because he's trying to avoid playing it that way, but then he plays it all kinds of ways. So he's got such knowledge of the fretboard, but also you can tell he's playing the chord voicings, even though we can't hear it very clearly, for the composition and for that particular voicing to go well with whatever's being played in the background. But let's get back into this performance.
Well, hey, working man like me, he never been on welfare. One place he won't be, he'd be working. Long as his two hands are fit to use, he might drink a little beer that evening and sing a little bit of his working man blues.
And there we have it. When Merle does play the guitar, it sometimes looks like he has lost his way and he's not really sure where he's playing, but that's just his style. He's so relaxed on stage and he's never phased. And this is something that when you are watching a lesser performer and they might not play a right chord, that will phase them and they'll lose their point in the song and the performance will start to go downhill. But there is a point, and maybe a couple of points in this performance, where as a guitar player, and I'm sure the guitarists out there who are watching the fretwork will see that Merle does miss a chord position or two, but the markings of a true professional is not allowing the audience to know that you've made a mistake. It's something that I get asked in the comments section quite a lot, where people say, how do you not make any mistakes live? And all the top players never make any mistakes, whereas I always mess something up. And the answer is, everybody messes up live. Even the top players make mistakes, and they are so well hidden that you don't notice them. But if you analyze a performance and go through it with a fine-tooth comb, you will find tiny little mistakes that are covered so well by the artist. And especially if you're watching one particular performance and you look at it over and over and over and over again, you start to see these little points at which the guitarist has made a mistake and how quickly they've recovered. And you will find it all over the place. It really does help if you have played for a long time to be able to spot these tiny little details, but also you can appreciate how good the players are at covering them up when you see a mistake and then they instantly get rid of it, and they might apply a little bit of palm muting on the note that they've hit so that it dies, and then they get straight back into the progression again. It's the recovery that starts to become really impressive. It's something that when you do make a lot of mistakes live, you will do to begin with, you get better at dealing with them, to the point where it's exactly the same as getting down any technique on the guitar. When you start making mistakes, getting good at recovering from mistakes almost becomes a technique, so that you are so good at it, nobody notices it. Because it's such a full band, it means that Merle doesn't really have to supply any rhythm guitar because it's all going to be in there. And when his lead does kick in, he has been boosted a little bit on the mixer so that we can hear the lead notes going on. Again, playing lead guitar is one of those things technique-wise that takes a lot of time to get down in order just to sell a lead guitar solo. And a super clean tone here, by the way, as well. Across the board, I mean, Roy earlier with his solo had a little bit of overdrive on there, but fundamentally a really clean sound overall. We haven't got loads of reverb and delay here. Unfortunately, I'm not going to have time to get into Merle's whole career background in this video, but just quickly, I did say that he had a troubled life when he was younger, in and out of jail, but he did meet Liz Anderson, who wrote a lot of the songs that he had hits with in the 60s, and that was Lynn Anderson's mum, and that came about because I believe the story is a little bit sketchy trying to find out the information, but while he was in jail, they did allow inmates out to do community projects. And one of the things that Merle had to do was go and listen to Liz go and play her songs, because she wanted an audience and somebody to listen to her. And obviously Merle wasn't thrilled about having to go to an old woman's house and listen to her play the piano and sing. But anyway, he went and he realized that every time she sang a new song, it was a hit. He couldn't believe how good these songs were. So fast forward, and that's why Liz Anderson was the writer of a lot of hits that Merle had in the 60s. And in the 70s, he was with the Strangers, his band. They had, I think, 9 consecutive #1 country hits in the mid-70s. So they just dominated that chart throughout that period. But like I said, I won't have too much time to get into it tonight. But thank you guys so much for suggesting this video in the first place for me to take a look at, and keep those suggestions coming in the comments below. Let me know what you guys think, and if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you guys at the next one. Rock!